exploring the soon-to-be-released Promotions app on Google Hangouts, which will enable you to drive e-commerce through your Hangouts. Hi, my name is Krishna Day. You'll find me online at krishnaday.com and also on Google+. What I want to share with you today is actually some experimentation that's going on, and there's a gentleman called Mike Downs who's based in the UK who's been sharing some of the tests he's been doing with a soon-to-be-released app for Google+. I wrote about this a few days ago, but I thought what I'd do is in this video is share with you some of the things that have been happening and going on with this new app and why you might be interested in it if you're using Google Hangouts in your organization. The Promotions app is really interesting because for a little while, Google has been partnering with a number of large brands to do what they call Shoppable Hangouts. Now, I'm deliberately not logged into Google Plus at this moment. You can see that it says join Google Plus right at the top. And I just want to take you through a few examples of brands who've been doing these events called Shoppable Hangouts. And then what's going to be happening for those of us who've got smaller organizations. It's not going to be the same partnership that Google would have had with these large organizations. So here's one that caught my attention, which was at the end of 2013, and it was from Best Buy. And I thought this was a very smart move on behalf of Best Buy, because what they did is just before Christmas, they actually did a shoppable hangout with last minute deals. So you can see here it was held on the 18th of December. And I'm going to click on the Hangout. So they hosted this over on Google+. They've got an event page here. Because I did go, you can't see I did because I am not logged in here at the time. But it actually can indicate whether people are going to go to the event. And if the brand leaves it open, you can also leave comments to say questions that you want to have asked during that particular event as well. But what happens is when I watch that event, and remember, I'm not logged in here, you could also find this over on YouTube. And I'll show you that separate interface a little bit later. But if I click on this, what happens is the event opens up. Now, in this particular case, Best Buy have made that video private because obviously it was just for something specifically at the time of Christmas. But over on the right-hand side, I can see this thing called Google Shopping Shortlists. And these are the products that were featured during that Hangout. So they were giving tips on that Hangout. And then if I click on these, it would take me through to be able to make a purchase from their store. Let's have a look at another example. Because I'm based in Ireland, I was really interested of starting to see shoppable hangouts taking place in Europe. And this is an example from January this year, and it's the brand Topman. So what I can see here is, again, they've got an event that they were promoting from their Google Plus page. Down here in the details, you can see that they said they were partnering with Google Plus to bring a global first, follow the front row. So this was a live event that was being hosted. It was featuring the Autumn-Winter 2014 men's collection from the retailer Topman. Because I'm here in Ireland, I was also interested that Darren Kennedy, who's a TV fashion expert, who's also Irish, was one of the hosts of that show. And when I come back and I look at this, they were actually doing a show from the runway. They were sharing tips from behind the scenes, but they also had the opportunity that the products that were being featured, you can actually look to make a purchase. So again, let's have a look how this works. So here we are in the Hangout, and there are the two presenters. And over on the right-hand side, we can actually see the products that were being featured on that runway show. And in this segment, you can also see they're in live conversation, and they've also got people who've joined them as guests in the Hangout, and yet still all of that shopping list is still visible. Now let's roll forward to March of 2014. And in this particular event, we've got Nike Air Max Day. So it's 27 years since the Air Max was launched. And in this particular situation, online retailer ASOS partners with Nike to hold a shoppable hangout. So again, let's have a look what happens when we click on their event page. So again, on the right-hand side, we can actually see the products that are going to be featured during the course of that hangout. I'm sure you're starting to think about how you could put this kind of feature in place in your organization. And in fact, that's why I was so delighted to see that Mike Downs was testing this new promotions app. It's not yet available, but he's been testing it on behalf of Google Hangouts to actually explore and get feedback from people about what they think about it. Now, I did write an article about my first impressions and some of the things that I noted, but I want to take you through two of the examples of Hangouts that Mike has been hosting using the promotions app. So here's one he's done very recently, and what he's done in the background is that he's set up, in terms of the shopping area, several links. And in this particular event, I'll put a link to it in the show notes so you'll be able to go back and look at it yourself. But again, I'm watching the event here. And one of the great things about Hangouts is that you've got the replay, unless, of course, like Best Buy, you make the event private afterwards. But that replay is immediately available. So even if Mike was doing this and the promotions app had been launched and people weren't able to join him, if he wants, he can leave the replay there publicly for people to see, or he can make it just restricted to a certain number of people he wants to have see it. And even after the event, people can come back to it. So I think the key thing here is in your Hangout, if you're hosting it, provide valuable tips and information and provide something that's a little different. So the three examples I gave you of Best Buy doing it before Christmas about last minute shopping buys, about the example from Topman when what they were doing is around a live event and showing things there, or Nike doing it because it was a particular celebration. I think those give you some ideas about what you might be able to do for your organisation. So this is going to be exciting. That's going to be rolled out at some stage for all of us to be able to use. So let's have a look what happens in terms of Camera World review. So Camera World is a store in the UK. Mike is a photographer, and in this little video hangout, what he does is he goes through some things and some recommendations. So I'm going to open up, I'm going to click on the event now and just show you a couple of things that happen when we watch the event. So when we join him in his hangout, you can see that he's got here a screen share. And over on the right hand side, he's got his featured items in his shopping list. So he has a link there to Camera World UK. So he's actually talking about Camera World. And then later on in the Hangout, he talks about other products. I think he talks about something that some of us might remember, old style film, in terms of those of us who've not been around just for the time of digital photography. And he also talks about a camera that he had, and he has a link there to a Wikipedia page. But we can actually play this through, and I just want to show you what happens when I actually click a link. So for example, one of the links he's featured here, because obviously this is a demonstration, he's not linking back to his own site, is actually to Camera World. So what happens when I click that link? It takes me directly to Camera World in terms of their website. So just imagine what this is going to be like in terms of having people watch your live event or watching a replay of it. You could be featuring products. It might be your book if you're an author. It might be an online program. It might be your e-commerce store. It could even be a link to get people to register for a live event that you've got coming up in the real world. You might be sending them over to perhaps to your Eventbrite page where people can make a registration. And of course, when you're doing things like this kind of a hangout, you want to provide added value. So maybe that's additional tips or exclusive offers. So you might do something where you do an add-on if you actually got somebody making a purchase, or you might do free shipping in terms of using a particular code that you tell them that's available only because they're watching that hangout. And, I did that with a recent event where I actually was talking about a particular product, and we had an exclusive offer for people who watched during the course of that show and a little bit afterwards. But I didn't have the feature here where I could actually direct them from being in that event. Now, the one thing to be aware of is that on this, I'm actually not able to see the rest of the event page. What that means is very often on an event, people actually leave comments. And you can see here where people have been leaving comments around the event that Mike did. So when I click on that Hangout and watch it from the event page, those comments disappear. So that's just something for you to be aware of. And unfortunately, at this point in time, there's no workaround for that. Also, when I was testing this out in terms of looking at it from my iPhone 5S, I haven't tested it on an Android device or a Windows device. One of the things that I notice is I actually don't see any of that shoppable content. So I just see the video that's playing. So that's something to consider in terms of understanding where your audience is. Now I want to show you what happens when Mike then later embedded that video onto his Google Plus profile. So after you've had an event, you may want to still continue to promote it. So in this particular case, on his Google Plus profile, and remember this could equally be that you might add it onto your website as well. When I see the video here, it's not on the event page, but this is a little bit different in terms of what happens. So let me show you what happens when I click to watch the YouTube replay of his Hangout, which is played directly from his Google Plus profile, not via the event page. So what happens in this particular case, the screen doesn't completely open up and you don't see the shoppable content when you actually click on it. What you do get is this little area which says be part of the conversation. Click to join the live Q&A on Google Hangouts. Some of you might have seen that brands in particular are using the Q&A app for Hangouts on air. So people can ask questions there. But again, that means that the questions, the event stream, all of that kind of content from your Hangout event is not there. Now that may not be so much of a problem in this particular case because it's the video that's been linked. So you would have to educate people about being able to click on be part of the conversation. And remember, not everybody joins your event at the same time, particularly if this is something that you are actually sharing it onto Google Plus or over onto your website. You'd need to tell people perhaps a couple of times in the course of the show, remember, if you want to see the products we're featuring, click on the link on the bottom, the yellow link that says be part of the conversation. So this is a feature that we currently see in Q&A. I'm not sure if it's going to change. It's my hope that the language would change there to say, see the products we're featuring, or whatever that language is. Even better if we could customize that ourselves, which I think is probably going to be unlikely just because of the ease or not of that this is going to be available. But at the minute it says be part of the conversation. Well, in fact, what Mike wants us to do is actually click it so we can actually see the products he's featuring. So now let's click on that. So remember, what I'm doing here is I'm watching an embed of that video from his recorded event, and he's now embedded this on Google Plus. So when I clicked on the be part of the conversation, it then took me into his Shoppable Hangout. In fact, it's called the Promotions app, not a Shoppable Hangout, but I can now see his Promotions app and see the products that he's going to be featuring in this particular event. Also, just to show you in terms of on YouTube, I can see the video here because I can see the way that Mike's got his YouTube channel structured. I can see his most recent uploads. Again, for yourself, if you were going to do something like this, you might feature it on your YouTube channel, or you could put a particular set of playlists together for your events. And I can see that particular event here. And then, of course, if I look at it here in terms of on YouTube, I can see this be part of the conversation, click to join the live Q&A. And if I did that again, it would take me to be able to see that shoppable content. So again, clicking from his YouTube video on that call to action, I can now come in to the event and see his featured products. There's one last thing I want to show you that Mike has been testing, which I think may be of interest as well. So it could be that you decide that you want to use a Q&A app. So let's come here and show you how the Q&A app works. And in this particular case, what we can see is this is an ASOS event that happened a little while back, and they were featuring tips in this Hangout about men's styling in terms of suits and tailoring. I'm looking at their event page, and what I see here on the top right is the Q&A app. So if I scroll down the event page in this particular situation, it may be that they've closed off comments, so they don't want comments on the event page. They do want questions on the Q&A app. And so if I click and I look to play that video, and this is the replay of their Hangout, over on the right hand side, I can see questions that have been asked during the course of that event. So let's look at what Mike has been testing. In this test, Mike is exploring using both the promotion app and the question app together. And he's joined in the event by Chad Lafarge and Larry Fenouillet. Both of them are Hangout aficionados. All three people are people you should follow if you're interested in Hangouts. So in this particular case, let's see what happens when we click on that event in terms of the replay of it. So over on the right hand side, I can see the shoppable content, and I can see up here a little square box. If I click on that square box, it gives me the option of looking at the promotions, which is what I'm doing here, the things that Mike has chosen to feature, or the Q&A app. So it's interesting that he's been able to test both of these out. I think this is something just to be aware of. We'll have to work through what's the best way to get people to interact. And this might be just, kind of a little bit complicated perhaps for some of your viewers if they're not used to watching Hangouts. So if I click the Q&A app, I can see the questions that have been featured here. And so Mike, obviously, because this is a test, he was saying who will win the World Cup. And so that was the question that he was hoping was going to be addressed in this Hangout. But of course, that's just a test for him. If I click back to promotions, it brings me back to the content that he's then promoting, as we might have known it as the Shoppable Hangout. But of course, this is now being called the Promotions app, because it doesn't have to be just things that you can buy. It could be other things that you want to feature. Let's say you're a blogger, you might be using the Promotions app to direct people back to a previous article you've written or a white paper that you have, or it might be, directing people back to watch a playlist of your other show. So lots of different ways that you may be able to put this Promotions app into play. I realise this is a much longer video than I often do in terms of my video tutorials. I hope you've actually found it of assistance, just because in terms of being able to give you some ideas about what we have to look forward to. I really appreciate Mike has done all this work in terms of testing. I've really enjoyed watching his recent test. Make sure that you follow Mike over on Google+. So if you are on Google+, find Mike Downs, add him to your circles as somebody to follow, particularly in terms of someone who's experimenting with this tool at the moment. And if you found this at all helpful, I'd welcome you adding me to your circles. You'll find me, Krishna Day Online is my personal profile. Krishna Day is my business profile on Google+. Of course, you'll find me at krishnaday.com. My personal blog is at krishna.me, and many other social sites as well across the web. If you found this helpful and you want to join me for some of my live hangouts that I do, then you can register over at visualcontentmarketingshow.com, and do leave me your questions, leave me your observations. And if you have a question, then you never know, I might answer it in an article, a podcast, an online video, or in fact, I might even host a hangout all about it. Thanks again for watching.